Wouldn't it be reassuring to imagine that witch hunts are a thing of the past? Wouldn't it be reassuring to imagine that we live in the enlightened age of the internet, where people are no longer so eager to tear each other down? Now, I just draw your attention back to the very first sentence in this screenshot, even though Jared and I had not been physical at all. She and Jared never slept together. And we have the screenshots showing Heidi, the wife here, directly encouraging them to have sex together. I'll just put these on screen. I won't read this out. And Jared writes back after these text messages from his wife saying, like, okay, you two go ahead and have sex. And he writes back, sorry, we went for a walk with lots of soul searching, period. Now, by contrast, okay, someone like Repzian, 143,000 views on this completely factually false, completely hypocritical moral condemnation of ProJared. Why aren't you following up? Why aren't you having some meaningful discussion or apology or retraction? Delete the video, but also put up a video, do what a journalist would do. New York Times to say correction on page 14. I mean, you're really in the wrong here. If you grew up in the United States or Great Britain, you probably grew up with this phrase, witch hunt, being a big part of your education. You learned about the history in England and America of literally hunting and persecuting witches. And sometimes these stories were told to us as kids with a bit of a wink and a smile, kind of smug sense of how refined and well-educated we are in the modern era compared to the darkness of the Dark Ages. Sometimes it was instead given as a cautionary tale. Say, oh, but look at the persecution of communists in a certain period in American history. Look at how witch hunts emerged against homosexuals and other minorities. And sometimes it was with the reassuring sense that the era of witch hunts is over. What the internet has shown us is that human nature doesn't change. From the very, very first announcement of this so-called scandal between ProJared and his wife, I knew what the situation was. And what I mean is, by reading only one side of the story, the most dishonest and manipulative side of the story, his jilted ex-wife, just from her account of events, I could tell what the reality of the situation was. And that reflects who I am and my experience with relationships and even, in a sense, my level of literacy. I could tell by paying close attention to what she was saying and what she was not saying. And now, in the passage of about 2 weeks, various sources have come out, including just the collapse of the ex-wife's case. She's basically admitted the extent to which she lied and misled people, although she does so in a way that's flattering to herself. But you know what carries on? The witch hunt. The witch hunt mentality. These people, 700,000 views on a video harshly condemning ProJared, 140,000 views on a video. These people will never apologize. They'll never issue a correction. They'll never even say something as neutral as, wow, I wish I'd bought a book on Journalism 101 and followed basic procedures of journalistic ethics, fact-checking, checking sources. No, you'll never hear that from them. They're happy. I mean, sorry, just look at this guy's face. I'm not saying this to shame him because of his appearance. I mean, different people came out of the woodwork to practice their sense of moral superiority on this issue. Some of them are beautiful and some of them are ugly. But what most of them have in common is that they do not have a lot of experience with relationships, because what they have experience with is video games. Now, these two guys in particular, Repzian and Review Tech USA, these two guys, I think they have especially little experience with relations, the opposite sex. Yeah, partly based on appearances. Repzian also, I know he had a very conservative Christian upbringing. It's part of his emergence onto YouTube was him becoming an atheist and rejecting that upbringing. I know he's someone who's not really comfortable with his own sexuality. And in this case, he got to demonstrate to the world just how uncomfortable he is with someone else's sexuality. Okay, so that you guys know what I'm talking about, let's jump to some primary sources here. Quote, in early 2018, Heidi told ProJared she wanted him to explore his feelings for me. She was enjoying the advantages of an open relationship, including a long-term boyfriend, and wanted Jared to do the same. Jared and his wife were in an open, so-called polyamorous relationship. For reasons you'll even see within this video, I think it's a lot more responsible to use the term open relationship and not the term polyamory. You will soon see why. Even though Jared and I had not been physical at all, Heidi called me from Jared's phone and screamed at me. I asked her what she wanted me to do, telling her I would do anything to help her feel better. All she did was scream, "Go away." She continued to be enraged. I conveyed to her that I was happy to just be friends and professional colleagues with ProJared. Her response was a fit of rage. Later, in February 2018, she called me from Jared's number and howled, "I want my husband to think of me, not you," during sex. I tried to apologize multiple times to Heidi. I tried gifts and words, but nothing was enough for her. I wasn't even sure what I was apologizing for. I just wanted to make her feel better and not be angry. But there was nothing I could do or say. Now, I just draw your attention back to the very first sentence in this screenshot. Even though Jared and I had not been physical at all. She and Jared never slept together. And we have the screenshots showing Heidi, the wife here, directly encouraging them to have sex together. I'll just put these on screen. I won't read this out. And Jared writes back after these text messages from his wife saying, like, okay, you two go ahead and have sex. And he writes back, sorry, we went for a walk with lots of soul searching, period. So you can see his wife was cool with him having a sexual relationship with another woman, but evidently actually felt more threatened by what was just some kind of intellectual relationship. These are all people who struggle with their sexuality, struggle with relationships, struggle to handle these situations because they're putting huge amounts of time into hobbies that are fundamentally childlike and keep them locked in a rudimentary stage of development. Hey, it's a hot take, I know, but how would you feel if it was someone with any other kind of compulsion? If it was someone who spent all their time gambling and playing cards, you'd say, well, you've kind of developed the social skills and habits of someone who spends all his time hanging out in casinos. If it was someone who was from their earliest years an athlete, let's say a professional boxer, a professional tennis player, it's like, look, you spent all your time, in training in a certain kind of very strange social situation, and now you come out in the real world and you can't handle these situations so well. But we all know video games are actually much more isolating than that. The experience of playing a video game for 12 hours is more asocial. It's more socially retarding, let's be honest here, than the experience of being a competitive athlete or even being a gambler. Gamblers got to have some face-to-face interaction with people, unless it's computer gambling, I suppose. So look, you guys have already seen this on screen. If you're going to come out and condemn somebody on the internet, pause to ask yourself, 1, how would I feel if someone were doing this to me? And 2, how does my cadence differ from how we discuss this face-to-face in a coffee shop? And I'm saying this because I think there are all kinds of issues that are worthwhile and important to come out and morally condemn people about. The Crown Prince of Norway and his completely hypocritical statements about ecology. Sure. There are all kinds of public figures and other YouTubers. There's an infinite, range of legitimate criticism at any given time. And you got to question your own motivation, your own means, and your own responsibility. And even if you are a YouTuber, you have to think in terms of journalistic integrity, or to be blunt, personal integrity. Now, guys, I've had controversies on this channel. The single most deeply felt was actually my book review of Motivational Methods for Vegan Advocacy by Casey Taft. That guy was devastated by negative review I did of his book. Let's go back to points 1 and 2 I just raised. exactly what I said in that book review, and even the same cadence I used, I would have said to him face to face in the coffee shop. Absolutely. I'm not ashamed of what I said or how I said it in that book review at all. Obviously, it's a monologue rather than a dialogue, but other than that, sure, I would break down the same points for him. And number one, how would I feel if someone were doing this to me? I would feel great. I would be so glad if someone did for a book or an essay that I'd written what I did in reading that book. And when he got in touch with me, so that guy, he went all the way. He completely lost his composure, whatever you want to say. He was completely broken up by this, by having someone, take apart his book in a critique in a YouTube video. I said, well, what do you mean? I read your book. And my criticism of your book, it's closely following the text. Like, it really shows that I've read your book. I'm not making something up about your sex life. I'm not making something up about your relationship with your wife or your husband. I'm not making something up about your financial situation. And, all of those things have happened to me. I've had so many insane conspiracy theories and completely false rumors created about me. Still to this day, not a single complaint about me was based on anything real, whether sexual, financial, or otherwise. It's all been lies. And I even feel there are things worth criticizing, worth complaining about, but it's all been fiction, So I just say that kind of confrontation review, I feel completely morally positive of that. What do you mean? You published this book, I read it, I did a criticism. My criticism is really about the book. It's not assassinating your character or slandering you. It's not speaking irresponsibly. I'm not making things up about the book. I'm not lying. But what's the book? So I would feel great if someone did this to me, even if they disagree with me. And believe me, when you write about Buddhist philosophy, it's so depressing that nobody is responding to the actual substance of what you've written. I've had hit pieces. I've had slander against me from Buddhist monks. Buddhist monks in full robes have written slander. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Human nature doesn't change. We're living in a digitally amplified world of ever ongoing witch hunts. And I've been the target of that more than most. And it's tragic. It's really sad that today it's ProJared's turn. To mention somebody who should have a thick skin about this, one of the people who freaked out and hated me for what I said about Nina and Randa was Vegan Foot Soldier. So if you guys don't know Vegan Foot Soldier, he basically has a comedy channel, makes a lot of jokes, and some of it's coarse humor, some of it's crude humor. And he insults people, especially people like Unnatural Vegan, other vegans in the movement. He has really harsh insults against them, sometimes about their physical appearance. I've seen him insult Unnatural Vegan for being ugly and so on, and being fat and what have you. So you might think that guy would have a very detached, down-to-earth attitude about my critique of Nina and Randa, which again, for me, it completely satisfies those 2 points. How would I feel if someone said this to me? What I said about Nina and Randa that sparked the controversy was I said, look, within the vegan movement, people are saying you're so beautiful and you can be great actresses and great musicians. But the reality is you live in Los Angeles. There's a lot of competition. And we as vegans, we shouldn't have this small town mentality. Like just because someone's vegan, we say they're beautiful, or just because someone's vegan, we say they're a great musician or a great actor. They're not. They're just someone who happens to be vegan. And the reality is when these young women in their 20s, by the way, when they go to an audition in Los Angeles, they're not outstandingly beautiful. They're not people for whom the doors of Hollywood are going to open easily. They actually have a really tough struggle ahead of them every time they go to an audition. And again, if someone said exactly the same things about me, I would agree. I don't think I'm someone who's good looking enough that I can get by on YouTube or whatever, that I can scrape by on my looks. So, in various circumstances in my life, I think that's worth talking about and is meaningful. And again, even the cadence, how I said it and so on, And then, but in that case, this relates back to the main topic here. How did I follow it up? Again, look on screen. We had some really meaningful conversations with that, including some videos I did with my girlfriend. It's a long time ago. You may not remember. But, we did a video called Nina and Randa Say Everyone is Beautiful. We don't. And I was talking about that. Like, look, some people subscribe to this thing of saying everyone's beautiful all the time. And we don't say everyone's brilliant. We don't say everyone's gifted. We don't say everyone's a genius. We don't say everyone's talented. It's not not our approach to life. And reflecting on that. And I have a playlist called Stop Treating Women Like Infants. It's all very meaningful discourse I really stand behind. Now, by contrast, okay, someone like Repzion, 143,000 views on this completely factually false, completely hypocritical moral condemnation of ProJared. Why aren't you following up? Why aren't you having some meaningful discussion or apology or retraction? Delete the video, but also put up a video, do what a journalist would do. New York Times says, hey, correction on page 14. I mean, you're really in the wrong here. Factually wrong and morally wrong. The other guy, the fat guy, Review Tech USA, it's shameful. And that picture, that image of him, that's frame 1 of the video. He opens, giggling, laughing. He had gleeful disregard for the truth, gleeful disregard for the facts. He was smugly glorying in another person's misfortune. Absolutely zero personal integrity. I'm leaving out the most salacious screenshots that absolutely confirm the brutally sexual nature of the open relationship that ProJared and his ex-wife had. I don't blame them. Why do you think grown adults go to cosplay events? This is basically a form of BDSM for grown-ups. It's candy-coated BDSM. It's really not so different from the people who want to dress up in skin-tight leather and skin-tight latex and go to those events. And a lot of the people who go to those two types of events are the same people. The people who have a dedicated walk-in closet for this kind of ludicrously vain, complex outfit. And they're going there to meet some of those other people they can connect with on that wavelength. Yeah, in some ways there's more to it than that, and in some ways there's less to it than that. There are people who are into some kind of kinky open relationship sex who also want to meet someone who plays the same video games they play or watch the same Japanese movies they play. Sure, but guess what? I think if you go to the leather clubs, if you go to BDSM events, people there also want to meet people who watch the same movies they watch. Just look it up on dating websites. I mean, it's the same crap. It's so depressing. If you're single and you look at one of the main things is, I love Lord of the Rings. I play Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my God, that's what a lot of people want to meet. So look, I don't hate on them for that. I think sex can be meaningful in adult people's lives, and I do not think that playing Mega Man on the Sony PlayStation can be meaningful in adult lives. So if there's anything in this guy's life I harshly judge and condemn, it's not the sex. And it just reflects the type of people doing this witch hunt, how lacking they are, and any sympathy for, any understanding for grown-ups who want to live like grown-ups. As I said in the earlier video, this guy is not Big Bird. This guy did not pretend to be a children's entertainment channel or a children's entertainer or a school teacher or anything else. You're judging him by a standard he never tried to live up to. Now, on the other hand, I think there are standards all of us have to live up to. I think that everyone should try to be an exemplary human being. And I think that starts by putting away childish things. It starts by recognizing, the danger and the difficulty of being an adult on planet Earth, and the few years you've got to make a positive difference in other people's lives for the planet, and the few years you've got to try to become a better person yourself. Even though ProJared and I had a long-standing professional platonic relationship, Heidi wanted us to never speak again. She became extremely jealous and vindictive. Both Jared and I were scared of her. I don't know when ProJared started having feelings, but I didn't realize that I had them at all until then. It was like being pushed into ice water. I've talked about being asexual for years. I never expected to have feelings for him, and it was terrifying. On February 7th, 2018, ProJared took me on a walk. Despite having Heidi's full permission to do more, all we did was talk about our feelings. Jared and I were transparent about our discussion with both Heidi and all others involved with the situation. So guess what, guys? The original sexually transmitted disease is love. So this could be a kind of heartwarming tale about two nerdy, inept, video game addicted people who, who were in this kinky situation where they were encouraged to have sex. They decided not to have sex, but they ended up falling in love. So again, you can see this on screen briefly. This is Heidi giving her direct consent for her husband to have sex with this woman, but evidently she did not give her consent for them to develop meaningful feelings with each other. When ProJared responded to Heidi's Facebook post neutrally, she then enacted the vengeance she'd been planning for a long time. She lied about not being polyamorous, not having an open relationship, and she lied about approving of the nudes. She slut-shamed me. She did not mention her long-term boyfriend or threats. So the point is the boyfriend other than her husband, in addition to her husband. Here are some statements from Heidi of her gloating. I could not for the life of me find Jared's gold play button. That's the plaque they send out to people who cross the 1 million subscriber threshold. I found both his silver play buttons, but not the gold. It would have been the perfect thing to steal from him, because if he asked about it, I could say, what million subscribers? ? Anyway, I guess this is my confession of innocence. I didn't steal it, but I would have if I could have. These are just statements showing that she was in a vindictive spiral of trying to take revenge against this guy and destroy his life. And gee, can you imagine a responsible journalist checking against this kind of thing or considering? Again, to me, it was obvious. When I read the first statement on Twitter, I already knew the whole story. I'm being honest, I didn't guess 90% of it. I guessed 100% of it. And I think it was obvious to kind of people who have some kind of sophisticated background with relation to the opposite sex. And guess what, guys? Sympathy is an analytical tool. I can even sympathize with Heidi's side of the story. She was stupid and immature and vindictive and evil and wrong, but she was cool with sex with other people. She explicitly talks about 3 ways with 2 men and 1 woman. She explicitly talks about 2 women and 1 man, and other women watching them, and other women wanting photos of them and him naked. It's spelled out there, okay? And she lied. She lied saying that there were screenshots on a phone she had discovered that were going to back up her side of the story, and it has been the opposite. She's admitted she doesn't have evidence for her side of the story, and on the contrary, the screenshots from phones are completely confirming ProJared's side of the story. Number 5 in the United States, baby. Here she's gloating about how popular her tweet is, her tweet denouncing her husband, her ex-husband. Blank said I made him more famous than he's ever been before. Honestly, yeah, this is an insanely positive outcome to a horrible situation that I couldn't predict. I don't know if it'll last me the rest of my life or whatever, but I'm definitely going to savor it. So here we have Heidi gloating about her notoriety or the harm she's doing here. Jared and Holly won't address his sexual interactions with fans because they've been legally advised not to. There's no quote-unquote rule not to speak about ongoing litigation. It's just in their best interest not to address it in case they say something incriminating. Shame on you, Heidi. Shame on you. Think about what you're doing here. You're trying to condemn him out of silence after you've admitted that you had no evidence one way or another, that you just stirred the pot to try to get fans to make up stories or share rumor and innuendo that would condemn this guy. They have addressed it, and what they've established is that you're a liar. You're a liar, and your way of getting out of the lie is by admitting you never knew what you were talking about. Quote, I'll reiterate that I didn't specifically bring those allegations against him. I only had supporting evidence that indicated he was up to something, not true proof. But I do believe the people who have come forward since then. Right. Here's more backpedaling half-truths and covering up lies. I never claimed we had a traditional marriage. I just gave the facts that mattered. I didn't approve of a polyamorous situation between Jared and Holly. Even that is a lie. You've just seen the evidence that it's a lie. I tried to support it, and they immediately broke my trust. I'm allowed to revoke consent. You're allowed to lie. You're allowed to lie about it after the fact. Is that what you're saying, Heidi? I mean, again, I knew all this from the first message. I could tell this was the game being played from what she said and what she left unsaid. Quote, consent and boundaries aren't hard to understand. Jared and Holly continually gaslit me by pretending to not get it, no matter how many times I explained in detail. I was direct, specific, sincere. I always felt intentionally misunderstood. I had nothing to hide from Jared. He was up to date and aware of my interactions I had with this one other person. So this is the other long-term boyfriend she had in addition to her husband. I wonder why you're stating that so vaguely, Heidi. You're real explicit when you want to be and real fake the rest of the time. There were no lies, no cheating, no boundaries crossed on my part. That was all I wanted from any polyamorous situation. Period. I didn't get that from him. I told you all at the very beginning that I'm not perfect or blameless. Don't idolize me. I am a hurting person who will continue to address my own mistakes. I've grown tremendously this past year. I know that's the only path to finding real inner peace. But you did it, Heidi, also with the lie that you had this cell phone full of information showing how terrible this was. I didn't see a single journalist doing basic fact-checking. Basic journalistic ethics were neither on YouTube nor in print or what have you. Wouldn't it be reassuring to imagine that witch hunts are a thing of the past? Wouldn't it be reassuring to imagine that we live in the enlightened age of the internet, where people are no longer so eager to tear each other down? What I see is a great deal of insecurity from people who don't feel intelligent themselves and who want to demonstrate through any little vindictive way they can that they're smarter than other people. People who don't feel morally confident themselves and who want to vindictively tear down others and prove you're not as moral as you think you are. Ultimately, it's this old pattern of behavior. Who do you think you are? Don't you know who I think I am? We're living in a future that is increasingly lacking in privacy. The challenge now is to ask, how can we live with dignity in the absence of privacy? When you think about it, there's no real particular dignity in just keeping a secret. There's nothing particularly moral in living an immoral life that other people don't judge you for just because they don't know. What we need to practice as a culture, as a world-spanning civilization, is going to work with a coworker when you know they've got nude pictures of themselves somewhere on the internet, and still treating them with respect, still treating them with dignity. Before the camera was ever invented, people were still naked. They were still swimming naked or doing all kinds of things naked outside of office hours, and you still had to learn the discipline of treating them with dignity, even though you may not approve of what they do in their personal life. I think we see that challenge before our eyes now more than ever before. It's a challenge for the people doing the judging as much as it is a challenge for those of us who are putting our face here on YouTube and being judged.
Dun, 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 dun.